Good evening, and thank you for joining me for another Boring Books for Bedtime. I hope tonight's selection provides all the boredom your busy brain needs to quiet down and let you get some sleep. Before we begin, I'd like to give a special shout out of thanks to quite a list of new Patreon supporters. Stephanie, Shelley, Flora, Duncan, Julie, Colleen, Victoria, Belinda, Sarah, Kent, Sandy, Samantha, Herb, Pete, Rebecca, Valerie, C.A., and Pilar. Thank you all so much for supporting this podcast. By becoming members of Patreon, you help us remain one of the few ad-free spaces in relaxation left, and it's very much appreciated. If you're interested in supporting Boring Books for Bedtime and finding out more about the perks available to subscribers, including exclusive episodes, full books, collections, and giveaways found nowhere else, you'll find a link to Patreon in the show description. You'll also find a link to buymeacoffee.com, where you can support us with a one-time tip, no subscription required. I hope you'll take a moment to check them out. Now, let's read and relax. Find a comfortable spot. Adjust your volume. Take a nice deep breath in. Let it out slowly. And off we go. Tonight, let's kick off a new year of good sleep with one of your favorites, Our Cats and All About Them, their varieties, habits, and management, and for show, the standards of excellence and beauty described and pictured by Harrison Weir, FRHS, in a new edition. First published in 1892 by the Fancier's Gazette, London. Let's pick up right where we left off as Mr. Weir describes different types of cats. Let's begin. The tortoiseshell cat. I now come to the section of the short-haired domestic cat, a variety possessing sub-varieties. Whether these all came from the same origin is doubtful, although in breeding, many of the different colors will breed back to the striped or tabby color, and per contra, white whole-colored cats are often got from striped or spotted parents, and vice versa. Those that have had any experience of breeding domesticated animals or birds know perfectly well how difficult it is to keep certain peculiarities gained by years of perseverance of breeding for such points of variation, or what is termed excellence. Place a few fancy pigeons, for instance, in the country, and let them match how they like, and one would be quite surprised, unless he were a naturalist, to note the great changes that occur in a few years, and the unmistakable signs of reversion towards their ancestral stock, that of the rock pigeon. But with the cat, this is somewhat different, as little or no attempts have been made, as far as I know of, until cat shows were instituted, to improve any particular breed either in form or color, nor has it even yet, with the exception of the long-haired cats. Why this is so, I am at a loss to understand, but the fact remains. Good, well-developed cats of certain colors fetch large prices, and are, if I may use the term, perpetual prize winners. I will take as an instance the tortoiseshell tom, he or male cat, as one of the most scarce, and the red or yellow tabby she-cat as the next. And yet, the possessor of either, with proper care and attention, I have little or no doubt, has it in his power to produce either variety ad libitum. It is now many years since I remember the first tortoiseshell tomcat, nor can I now at this distance of time quite call to mind whether or not it was not a tortoiseshell and white, and not a tortoiseshell pure and simple. It was exhibited in Piccadilly. If I remember rightly, I made a drawing of it, but as it is about 40 years ago, of this I am not certain, although I have lately been told that I did, and that the price asked for the cat was 100 guineas. This supposed scarcity was rudely put aside by the appearance at the Crystal Palace show of 1871 of no less than one tortoiseshell he-cat, exhibited by Mr. Smith, and 3 tortoiseshell and white he-cats. But it will be observed there was really but only one tortoiseshell he-cat, the others having white. On referring to the catalogues of the succeeding shows, no other pure tortoiseshell has been exhibited, and he ceased to appear after 1873. But tortoiseshell and white have been shown from 1871, varying in number from 5 to 3 until 1885. One of these, a tortoiseshell and white belonging to Mr. Hurry, gained no fewer than 9 first prizes at the Crystal Palace, besides several firsts at other shows. This maintains my statement that a really good, scarce variety of cats is a valuable investment, Mr. Hurry's cat Totty keeping up his price of £100 till the end. As may have been gathered from the foregoing remarks, the points of the tortoiseshell he-cat are black, red, and yellow in patches, but no white. The coloring should be in broad, well-defined blotches and solid in color, not mealy or tabby-like in the marking, but clear, sharp, and distinct, and the richer and deeper the colors, the better. When this is so, the animal presents a very handsome appearance. The eyes should be orange, the tail long and thick towards the base, the form slim, graceful, and elegant, and not too short on the leg, to which this breed has a tendency. Coming then to the actual tortoiseshell, he or male cat without white, I have never seen but one at the shows, and that was exhibited by Mr. Smith. It does not appear that Mr. Smith bred any from it, nor do I know whether he took any precautions to do so. But if not, I am still of the opinion that more might have been produced. In Cassell's Natural History, it is stated that the tortoiseshell cat is quite common in Egypt and in the south of Europe. This I can readily believe, as I think that it comes from a different stock than the usual short-haired cat, the texture of the hair being different, the form of tail also. I should much like to know whether in that country, where the variety is so common, there exists any number of tortoiseshell he-cats. In England, the he-kittens are almost invariably red tabby or red tabby and white. The red tabby she-cats are almost as scarce as tortoiseshell and white he-cats. Yet if red tabby she-cats can be produced, I am of opinion that tortoiseshell he-cats could also. I had one of the former, a great beauty, and hoped to perpetuate the breed, but it unfortunately fell a victim to wires set by poachers for game. Again, returning to the tortoiseshell, I have noted that, in drawings made by the Japanese, the cats are always of this color. That being so, it leads one to suppose that in that country, tortoiseshell he-cats must be plentiful. Though the drawings are strong evidence, they are not absolute proof. I have asked several traveling friends questions as regards the Japanese cats, but in no case have I found them to have taken sufficient notice for their testimony to be anything else than worthless. I shall be very thankful for any information on this subject, for to myself, and doubtless also to many others, it is exceedingly interesting. Anyone wishing to breed rich brown tabbies should use a tortoiseshell she-cat with a very brown and black-banded he-cat. They are not so good from the spotted tabby, often producing merely tortoiseshell tabbies instead of brown tabbies, or true tortoiseshells. My remarks as to the coloring of the tortoiseshell he-cat are equally applicable to the she-cat, which should not have any white. Of the tortoiseshell and white, hereafter. To breed tortoiseshell he-cats, I should use males of a whole color, such as either white, black, or blue, and on no account any tabby, no matter the color. What is wanted is patches of color, not tiny streaks or spots, and I feel certain that, for those who persevere, there will be successful results. The tortoiseshell and white cat. This is a more common mixture of coloring than the tortoiseshell pure and simple without white, and seems to be widely spread over different parts of the world. It is the opinion of some that this color and the pure tortoiseshell is the original domestic cat, and that the other varieties of marking and colors are but deviations produced by crossing with wild varieties. My brother, John Jenner Weir, FLS, FCS, holds somewhat to this opinion, but to me, it is rather difficult to arrive at this conclusion. In fact, I can scarcely realize the ground on which the theory is based. At the same time, I do not mean to ignore it entirely. And yet, if this be so, from what starting point was the original domestic cat derived, and by what means were the rich and varied markings obtained? I am fully aware that by selection, cats with large patches of color may be obtained. Still, there remain the peculiar markings of the tortoiseshell, nor is this by any means an uncommon color, not only in this country, but in many others, and there also appears to be a peculiar fixedness of this, especially in the female. But why it is not so in the male, I am at a loss to understand, the males almost invariably coming either red tabby or red tabby and white. One would suppose that black or white would be equally likely, but as far as my observations take me, this is not so, though I have seen both pure white, yellow, red, and black in litters of kittens, but this might be different were the parent tortoiseshell. Some years ago, I was out with a shooting party not far from Snowdon in Wales. When turning past a large rock, I came on a sheltered nook, and there, in a nest made of dry grasses, laid 6 tortoiseshell and white kittens about 8 to 10 days old. I was much surprised at this, as I did not know of any house near. Therefore these must have been the offspring of some cat or cats that were leading a roving or wild life, and yet it had no effect as to the deviation of the color. I left them there, and without observing the sex. I was afterwards sorry, as it is just possible, though scarcely probable, that one or more of the 6, being all of the same color, might have proved to be a male. As I left the neighborhood a few days after, I saw no more of them, nor have I since heard of any being there, so conclude they in some way were lost. I have observed in the breed of tortoiseshell or tortoiseshell and white that the hair is of a coarser texture than the ordinary domestic cat, and that the tail is generally thicker, especially at the base, though some few are thin-tailed, yet I prefer the thick and tapering form. Some are very much so, and of a good length. The legs are generally somewhat short. I do not ever remember seeing a really long-legged tortoiseshell, though when this is so, if not too long, it adds much to its grace of action. I give a drawing of what I consider to be a good tortoiseshell and white tom or he-cat. It will be observed that there is more white on the chest, belly, and hind legs than is allowable in the black and white cat. This I deem necessary for artistic beauty, when the color is laid on in patches, although it should be even, clear, and distinct in its outline. The larger space of white adds brilliancy to the red, yellow, and black coloring. The face is one of the parts which should have some uniformity of color, and yet not so, but a mere balancing of color. That is to say, that there should be a relief in black with the yellow and red on each side, and so in the body and tail. The nose should be white, the eyes orange, and the whole coloring rich and varied without the least tabbiness, either brown or gray, or an approach to it, such being highly detrimental to its beauty. I have received a welcome letter from Mr. Herbert Young of James Street, Harrogate, informing me of the existence of what is said to be a tortoiseshell tom or he-cat somewhere in Yorkshire, and the price is 50 guineas, but he unfortunately has forgotten the exact address. He also kindly favors me with the further information of a tortoiseshell and white he-cat. He describes it as splendid and extra good in color, and it is at present in the vicinity of Harrogate. And still further, Mr. Herbert Young says, I am breeding from a dark color cat and 2 tortoiseshell females, and he hopes by careful selection to succeed in breeding the other color out. This, I deem, is by no means an unlikely thing to happen, and by careful management may not take very long to accomplish, but much depends on the ancestry, or rather the pedigree of both sides. I, for one, most heartily wish Mr. Herbert Young success, and it will be most gratifying should he arrive at the height of his expectations. Failing the producing of the desired color in the he-cats by the legitimate method of tortoiseshell with tortoiseshell, I would advise the trial of some whole colors, such as solid black and white. This may prove a better way than the other, as we pigeon fanciers go an apparently roundabout way often to obtain what we want to attain in color, and yet there is almost a certainty in the method. As regards the tortoiseshell cat, there is a distinct variety known to us cat fanciers as the tortoiseshell tabby. this must not be confounded with the true variety, as it consists only of a variegation in color of the red, yellow, and the dark tabby, and is more in lines than patches, or patches of lines or spots. These are by no means ugly, and a well-marked, richly colored specimen is really very handsome. They may also be intermixed with white, and should be marked the same as the true tortoiseshell. But in competition with the real tortoiseshell, they would stand no chance whatever, and ought, in my opinion, to be disqualified as being wrong class, and be put in that for any other color. The brown tabby cat. The tabby cat is doubtless one of, if not the most common of colors, and numbers many almost endless varieties of both tint and markings. Of these, those with very broad bands of black or narrow bands of black on nearly a black ground are usually called black tabby, and if the bands are divided into spots instead of being in continuous lines, then it is a spotted black tabby. But I purpose in this paper to deal mostly with the brown tabby, that is to say, a tabby whose ground color is of a very rich, orangey dark brown ground, without any white, and that is evenly, proportionably, and not too broadly, but elegantly marked on the face, head, breast, sides, back, belly, legs, and tail, with bands of solid, deep, shining black. The front part of the head or face, and legs, breast, and belly should have a more rich red-orange tint than the back, but which should be nearly, if not equal in depth of color, though somewhat browner. The marking should be graceful in curve, sharply, well, and clearly defined, with fine, deep black edges, so that the brown and black are clear and distinct the one from the other, not blurred in any way. The banded tabby should not be spotted in any way, excepting those few that nearly always occur on the face and sometimes on the forelegs. The clearer, redder, and brighter the brown, the better. The nose should be deep red, bordered with black. The eyes an orange color, slightly diffused with green. In form, the head should not be large nor too wide, being rather longer than broad, so as not to give too round or clumsy an appearance. Ears not large nor small, but of moderate size and of good form. Legs medium length, rather long than short, so as not to lose grace of action. Body long, narrow, and deep towards the forepart. Tail long, and gradually tapering towards the point. Feet round with black claws and black pads. Yellowish white around the black lips and brown whiskers are allowable, but orange tinted are far preferable, and pure white should disqualify. A cat of this description is now somewhat rare. What are generally shown as brown tabbies are not sufficiently orange-brown, but mostly of a dark brownish gray. This is simply the ordinary tabby, and not the brown tabby proper. As I stated in my notes on the tortoiseshell cat, the best parents to obtain a good brown tabby from is to have a strongly marked, not too broad-banded tabby he-cat, and a tortoiseshell she-cat with little black, or red tabby she-cat, the produce being, when tabby, generally of a rich brown, or sometimes what is termed black tabby, and also red tabby. The picture illustrating these notes is from one so bred, and is a particularly handsome specimen. There were 2 he-cats in the litter, one the dark brown tabby just mentioned, which I named Aaron, and the other a very fine red tabby, Moses. This last was even a finer animal than Aaron, being very beautiful in color and very large in size, but he, alas, like many others, was caught in wires set by poachers. His handsome brother still survives, though no longer on my property. The banded red tabby should be marked precisely the same as the brown tabby, only the band should be of deep red on an orange ground. The deeper in color the better. Almost a chocolate on orange is very fine. The nose deep pink, as also the pads of the feet. The ordinary dark tabby the same way as the brown, and so also the blue or silver, only the ground color should be of a pale, soft blue color, not the slightest tint of brown in it. The clearer, the lighter, and brighter the blue, the better, bearing in mind always that the band should be of a jet black, sharply and very clearly defined. The word tabby was derived from a kind of taffeta or ribbed silk, which when calendared, or what is now termed watered, is by that process covered with wavy lines. This stuff in bygone times was often called tabby. Hence the cat with lines or markings on its fur was called a tabby cat, but it might also, one would suppose, with as much justice, be called a taffety cat, unless the calendaring of taffety caused it to become tabby. Certain it is that the word tabby only referred to the markings or stripes, not to the absolute color, for in Wit and Drollery, 1682, page 343, is the following: her petticoat of satin, her gown of crimson tabby. Be that as it may, I think there is little doubt that the foregoing was the origin of the term. Yet it was also called the brinded cat, or the brindled cat, also tiger cat, with some the grey cat, graymalkin. But I was rather unprepared to learn that in Norfolk and Suffolk it is called a cypress cat. Why cypress cat, quoth I. I do not know, said my informant. All I know is that such is the case. So I referred to my Bailey's Dictionary of 1730, and there, sure enough, was the elucidation, for I found that cypress was a kind of cloth made of silk and hair, showing wavy lines on it, and coming from Cyprus. Therefore this somewhat strengthens the argument in favor of taffeta or tabby, but it is still curious that the Norfolk and Suffolk people should have adopted a kind of cloth as that representing the markings and color of the cat, and that of a different name from that in use for the cat, one or more counties calling it a tabby cat as regards color, and the other naming the same as cypress. I take this to be exceedingly interesting. How or when such naming took place, I am at present unable to get the least clue, though I think from what I gather from one of the Crystal Palace Cat Show catalogues that it must have been after 1597, as the excerpt shows that at that time The shape and color was like a leopard's, which of course is spotted, and is always called the spotted leopard. Since this, I have learned that the domestic cat is said to have been brought from Cyprus by merchants, as also was the tortoiseshell. Cyprus is a color, a sort of reddish yellow, something like citron, so a Cyprus cat may mean a red or yellow tabby. However, I find Holloway, in his Dictionary of Provincialisms, 1839, gives the following: Calamanco cat. Calamanco, a glossy stuff, a tortoiseshell cat, Norfolk. Salmon, in the Complete English Physician, 1693, page 326, writing of the cat, says, "It is a neat and cleanly creature, often licking itself to keep it fair and clean, and washing its face with its 4 feet. The best are such as of a fair and large kind, and of an exquisite tabby color, called Cyprus cats." Spotted tabby cat. I have thought it best to give 2 illustrations of the peculiar markings of the spotted tabby, or leopard cat of some, as showing its distinctness from the ordinary and banded tabby. One of my reasons being that I have, when judging at cat shows, often found excellent specimens of both entered in the wrong class, thereby losing all chance of a prize, though if rightly entered, either might very possibly have taken honors. I therefore wish to direct particular attention to the spotted character of the markings of the variety called the spotted tabby. It will be observed that there are no lines, but what are lines in other tabbies are broken up into a number of spots, and the more these spots prevail, to the exclusion of lines or bands, the better the specimen is considered to be. The varieties of the ground color or tint on which these markings or spots are placed constitutes the name, such as black spotted tabby, brown spotted tabby, and so on. The red spotted tabby or yellow spotted tabby in she-cats being by far the most scarce. These should be marked with spots instead of bands, on the same ground color as the red or yellow banded tabby cat. In the former, the ground color should be a rich red with spots of a deep, almost chocolate color, while that of the yellow tabby may be a deep yellow cream with yellowish brown spots. Both are very scarce and are extremely pretty. Any admixture of white is not allowable in the class for yellow or red tabbies. Such exhibit must be put into the class, should there be one, which is usually the case at large shows, for red or yellow and white tabbies. This exhibitors will do well to make a note of. There is a rich-colored brown tabby hybrid to be seen at the Zoological Society Gardens in Regent's Park, between the wild cat of Bengal and a tabby she-cat. It is handsome but very wild. These hybrids, I am told, will breed again with tame variety or with others. In the brown spotted tabby, the dark gray spotted tabby, the black spotted tabby, the gray or the blue spotted tabby, the eyes are best yellow or orange tinted, with the less of the green the better. The nose should be of a dark red, edged with black or dark brown in the dark colors, or somewhat lighter color in the gray or blue tabbies. The pads of the feet in all instances must be black. In the yellow and the red tabby, the nose and the pads of the feet are to be pink. As regards the tail, that should have large spots on the upper and lower sides, instead of being annulated, but this is difficult to obtain. It has always occurred to me that the spotted tabby is a much nearer approach to the wild English cat and some other wild cats in the way of color than the ordinary broad-banded tabby. Those specimens of the crosses said to be between the wild and domestic cat that I have seen have had a tendency to be spotted tabbies, and these crosses were not infrequent in bygone times when the wild cats were more numerous than at present, as is stated to be the case by that reliable authority, Thomas Bewick. In the year 1873, there was a specimen shown at the Crystal Palace Cat Show, and also, the last year or two, there has been exhibited at the same place a most beautiful hybrid between the East Indian wild cat and the domestic cat. It was shown in the spotted tabby class and won the first prize. The ground color was a deep blackish brown with well-defined black spots, black pads to the feet, rich in color, and very strong and powerfully made, and not by any means a sweet temper. It was a he-cat, and though I have made inquiry, I have not been able to ascertain that any progeny has been reared from it. Yet I have been informed that such hybrids between the Indian wild cat and the domestic cat breed freely. The Abyssinian. I now come to the last variety of the tabby cat, and this can scarcely be called a tabby proper, as it is nearly destitute of markings, excepting sometimes on the legs and a broad black band along the back. It is mostly of a deep brown, ticked with black, somewhat resembling the back of a wild, only not so gray, rabbit. Along the center of the back, from the nape of the neck to the tip of the tail, there is a band of black, very slightly interspersed with dark brown hairs. The inner sides of the legs and belly are more of a rufous orange tint than the body, and are marked in some cases with a few dark patches, but they are best without these marks, and in the exhibition pens it is a point lost. The eyes are deep yellow, tinted with green, nose dark red, black-edged, ears rather small, dark brown, with black edges and tips. The pads of the feet are black. Altogether, it is a pretty and interesting variety. It has been shown under a variety of names, such as Russian, Spanish, Abyssinian, hare cat, rabbit cat, and some have gone so far as to maintain that it is a cross between the latter and a cat, proving very unmistakably there is nothing, however absurd or impossible, in animal or everyday life that some people are not ready to credit and believe. A hybrid between the English wild cat and the domestic much resembles it, and I do not consider it different in any way, with the exception of its color, from the ordinary tabby cat, from which I have seen kittens and adults bearing almost the same appearance. When the ground color is light gray or blue, it is generally called chinchilla, to the fur of which animal the coat has a general resemblance. I have but little inclination to place it as a distinct, though often it is a foreign breed. Such may be, though ours is merely a variety, and a very interesting one of the ordinary tabby, with which its form, habits, temper, etc. seem fully to correspond. Still, several have been imported from Abyssinia, all of which were precisely similar. And it is stated that this is the origin of the Egyptian cat that was worshipped so many centuries ago. The mummies of the cats I have seen in no case had any hair left, so that it was impossible to determine what color they were. The imported cats are of stouter build than the English and less marked. These, bred with an English tabby, often give a result of nearly black, the black band extending very much down the sides, and the brown ticks almost disappearing, producing a rich and beautiful coloring. I find there is yet another tint or color of the tabby proper, which I have not mentioned. That is to say, a cat marked with light, wavy lines. And an exceedingly pretty one it is. It is very rare. In fact, so much so that it has never had a class appropriated to it, and therefore is only admissible to or likely to win in the class for any other color, in which class usually a number of very beautiful varieties are to be found, some of which I shall have occasion to notice further on. The color, however, that I now refer to is often called the silver tabby, for want of a better name. It is this: the whole of the ground color is of a most delicate silver gray, clear and firm in tone, slightly blue, if anything apart from the gray, and the markings thereon are but a little darker, with a tinge of lilac in them, making the fur to look like an evening sky rayed with light clouds. The eyes are orange-yellow, and when large and full, make a fine contrast to the color of the fur. The nose is red, edged with a lilac tint, and the pads of the feet and claws are black, or nearly so. The hair is generally very fine, short, and soft. Altogether, it is most lovely, and well worthy of attention, forming as it does a beautiful contrast to the red, the yellow, or even the brown tabby. A turquoise ribbon about its neck will show to great advantage the delicate lilac tints of its coat, or if a contrast is preferred, a light orange scarlet, or what is often called geranium color, will perhaps give a brighter and more pleasing effect. This is by no means so uncommon a color in the long-haired cats, some of which are exquisite, and are certainly the acme of beauty in the way of cat coloring. But I must here remark that there is a vast difference in the way of disposition between these two light varieties, that of the former being far more gentle. In fact, I am of opinion that the short-haired cat in general is of a more genial temperament, more cosety, more observant, more quick in adapting itself to its surroundings and circumstances than its long-haired brother, and as a rule, it is also more cleanly in its habits, though at the same time I am willing to admit that some of these peculiarities being set aside, the long-haired cat is charmingly beautiful, and at the same time has a large degree of intelligence, in fact, much more than most animals that I know, not even setting aside the dog. And I have come to this conclusion after much long, careful, and mature consideration. the short-haired white cat. This of all, as it depends entirely on its comeliness, should be graceful and elegant in the outline of its form and also action, the head small, not too round nor thick, for this gives a clumsy, heavy appearance, but broad on the forehead and gently tapering towards the muzzle, the nose small, tip even and pink, the ears rather small than large and not too pointed, the neck slender, shoulders narrow and sloping backwards, loin full and long, legs of moderate length, tail well set on, long, broad at the base and gradually tapering towards the end. The white should be the yellow white, that is, the white of the colors, such as tortoiseshell, red tabby, or blues, not the gray white bred from the black, as these are coarser in the quality of the furs. The eye should be large, round, full, and blue. I noted this peculiarity of white when breeding white cochins many years ago. Those chickens that were black when hatched were a colder and harder white than those which were hatched buff. This coloring of white should be fully borne in mind when crossing colors in breeding, as the results are widely different from the two varieties. The whole color yellow-white will not do to match with blue or gray, as it will assuredly give the wrong tinge or color. The eye should be blue. Green is a great defect. Bright yellow is allowable, or what in horses is called wall eyes. Orange gives a heavy appearance, but yellow will harmonize and look well with a gray-white. White cats with blue eyes are hardy. Mr. Timms, in Things Not Generally Known, relates that even they are not so likely to be deaf as is supposed, and mentions one of 17 years old which retained its hearing faculties perfectly. Some specimens I have seen with one yellow eye and one blue. This is a most singular freak of nature, and to the best of my knowledge is not to be found among any of the other colors. It is stated that one of the white horses recently presented by the Shah of Persia to the Emperor of Russia has blue eyes. I can scarcely credit this, but think it must be a true albino, with the gray-pink colored eyes they generally have. Or possibly the blue eye is that peculiar to the albino cat and horse, as I have never seen an albino horse or cat with pink eyes, but a kind of opalesque color, or what is termed wall-eye. No doubt many of my readers have observed the differences in the white of our horses, they mostly being the gray-white with dark skin. But the pure white has a pink skin, and is much softer and elegant in appearance. It is the same with our white cats. And with the end of that description of the lovely white cat, I think we'll end this evening's reading from Our Cats and All About Them. As a confirmed cat lover, who happens to have a 17-year-old tabby sleeping on the desk where I'm recording this, I find this book a delight to read to you, and I hope you're enjoying it as well. If you'd like to read this work for yourself and see the many illustrations, as always, you'll find a link to a free ebook from Project Gutenberg in the show description. If you'd like to connect, suggest a boring book you'd like to hear read, or request more from one we've already started, you can drop me an email via our website, www.boringbookspod.com. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining me for this evening's reading. Until our next boring book, good night.